What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks, and today we are doing our deck tech on SlimeFoot and Squee. Now these guys are insane because we've had some Jund commanders in the past that bring creatures back from the graveyard, right? But none of them are this cheaply costed and this efficient. All we're gonna have to do is sacrifice this Squee guy, and then we bring them back with a massive beater next to them. Yes, I built this as a big Timmy deck that throws big giant creatures onto the battlefield. So all we have to do is fill our graveyard up and then reanimate those big beaters and run over our opponents with those big beaters. Additionally, there is a few other ways to deal damage to our opponents by just reanimating stuff, sacrificing creatures, and milling stuff into our graveyard even. So we're getting value off of milling stuff into the graveyard, we're getting value off of those big beaters, and you know, there is a Power Matters theme that cares about sacrificing big creatures. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. Alright guys, the first thing we're going to want to do is fill that graveyard. Shigeki is really good for this. Not only can he ramp you, but he's also really efficient at filling that grave. Faithless Looting, another solid card early game. We can get rid of those massive creatures in our hand to draw some better stuff like hopefully some lands or some ramp early game. Altar of Dementia. There's going to be a lot of big creatures in here, so that we're going to be able to sacrifice creatures to just mill 8 cards straight to the bin. Buried Alive is a super solid tutor card. It gets you exactly what you need in your graveyard. In this deck, honestly, if you throw Corvold and then Dragon Broodmother in the graveyard, you're going to have an insane engine for the rest of the game. Seer of Stolen Sight. I really like this card because we do have treasure tokens in here. Additionally, we're just sacrificing a lot of creatures. So now we'll have the option to throw whatever's on top of our library into our graveyard, which is going to be a really good thing to have over the course of a game. World Shaper is an amazing card. It's going to go ahead and mill us a lot and bring all of our lands back to the battlefield when it dies. Greater Good. I really like this card because, again, we're playing with a lot of big creatures. So now we're sacrificing those big creatures to just draw a lot of cards, and then we can put whatever we don't need out of those into the graveyard. Neheb Dread Horde Champion. I like this guy because he's pretty flexible, right? He's going to give us a little boost in mana while getting everything we don't want in our hand into our graveyard, and it's replacing those cards too. So it's amazing card selection and does fill our graveyard. Old Stick Fingers. This is going to throw creatures just from our library straight into our graveyard. You're guaranteed to get those creature hits with this guy, and that's why he's so good in this deck. Cavalier of Thorns, mills you, ramps you, does everything we want to do. Underrealm Lich is an amazing card. We're going to go ahead and look at the top 3 cards of our library, bin 2, and keep 1. Really good card selection. Doom Whisperer. This guy literally has Grizzlebrand vibes. We're just going to pay life until we have exactly what we need into our graveyard, and then we're going to run away with the game. Chainer Nightmare Adept. Super flexible. Again, it'll get rid of those 8 drops in our hand and then bring something useful back from the graveyard like a secure Tribe Elder, and then we can sack it for more value. Sir Conrad. This guy's going to be amazing in the deck. We're milling cards, which is doing damage, we're killing creatures, which is doing damage, and we're sacrificing our own creatures, which is also going to do damage. Cavalier of Flames. I like this card as well, right? Amazing card selection. It gives your creatures haste, and you know it does a lot of damage whenever it dies, judging on how many lands we have in our graveyard, which could be a lot. Dragon Mage. Just gives you a new grip every turn while filling your graveyard. I love this card. Let's get into the core of the deck. We have Bladewing Deathless Tyrant. I've been waiting for a perfect deck to shove this guy in, and this is definitely the one. There's no shot we're ever paying 7 mana for this guy. Additionally, the turn he comes down, he can attack and create a massive board state. Yargle and Multani, there's a ton of ways we can benefit from that 18 power. We have Ruthless Technomancer in here. We run Ghoulcaller Gisa. Additionally, like I said, Greater Good. Now we're just drawing 18 cards. It's an amazing thing to have 18 power in your graveyard that you can recur for some value out of nowhere. Ghoulcaller Gisa makes an appearance in the deck, as I said earlier. This can be even good just to sacrifice your commander for 6 power out of nowhere. Decks like this, it's always super solid just to have a lot of sack outlets in there. That way we can always get our commander to the graveyard. Dragon Broodmother, another solid sack outlet that can also just create a massive board state. Additionally, like I said, you get Corvold on the battlefield with this girl, and it's going to be insane. Ancient Brass Dragon. Yes, guys, there is a little bit of a dragon sub theme, just because honestly they're so cool and they synergize really well with sacrificing and bringing cards back from the graveyard, like this guy here. All we'll have to do is deal combat damage and we'll roll a d20 and just start throwing creatures from our graveyard onto the battlefield. Auric Lore Mage. Now we're choosing exactly what we want to throw into the graveyard, right? We can go tutor up a card, throw it into the graveyard, and we're good to go. Something people definitely miss about this card is it gives all of your creatures entering the battlefield from the graveyard haste. So now not only does your commander have haste, but the guy he brings back from the graveyard will have haste as well. Additionally, we can just use this to cast cards from our graveyard while we discard exactly what we need from our hand into the graveyard. Fauna Shaman is another solid way we can tutor for those cards while chucking stuff in into our graveyard. Eternal Witness, just a staple in any green deck, super solid for getting anything we need from our graveyard back into our hand. Anger, this one's going to be amazing. Mill it to the graveyard. Now again, all of our creatures have haste. Haste is super powerful. Feldon of the Third Path, another way to just get those big creatures onto the battlefield without using our commander. SlimeFoot Boots, protection for those big creatures when we do bring them back because our opponents are going to want to get rid of them. Phyrexian Tower, this one's just in here as another sack outlet, right? If we can't get our commander in the graveyard, we're not doing what we want to do. Moving on, let's get into the card advantage. We have Corvold. This guy's going to be insane in the deck, right? We're sacrificing a lot of creatures, a lot of Saprolings, our commander, so we're going to draw a lot of cards while we're doing that. Disciple of Bolas, there's a lot of big guys in here, so to sacrifice those big guys for a lot of cards, it's just value. The Great Henge and Guardian Project, what I like about these cards is they trigger on creatures entering the battlefield. And remember, our creature or our commander is going to enter in with another card from our graveyard. So every time we activate our commander's ability, we're going to draw 2 cards off of that as long as these cards are on the battlefield. Pretty crazy. Smothering Abomination and Midnight Reaper. These are going to be solid because now whenever we're sacrificing our commander, we're drawing cards. And additionally, Smothering Abomination doesn't care if we're sacrificing token creatures, right? So Smothering Abomination is going to be even more solid because we're even going to draw cards when we're sacrificing those Saprolings. The Gitrog Monster. We're milling a lot of cards in this deck, so whenever we mill those cards, if they just so happen to be a land card, we're going to go ahead and draw the card off of that, and that's going to be a lot of cards over the course of a game. Elemental Bond and Tribute of the World Tree. Our commander has 3 power, and the creatures we're going to be reanimating with our commander are also definitely going to be above 3 power. So now again, we're drawing 2 cards whenever we activate our commander's ability. Just pure value. Namada Primeval Warden. This is going to be a solid card we can sack our commander to. Additionally, it's going to screw over other graveyard strategies, but honestly, that's just an added benefit to the synergy this card has in the deck because we're also going to be creating a lot of Saprolings. Moving on to ramp, we obviously have Soul Ring and then our turn 2 ramp with Arcane Signet, Gorgari Signet, Gruul Signet, Rakdos Signet, all the signets, just super solid, super efficient ramp. Secure Tribuilder, again, that turn 2 ramp. Moving on, we have Phyrexian Altar. This is going to be super solid because our commander does require colors for that activation, so our lands aren't always going to be super good for that. So now we're going to be able to sacrifice our creatures to get exactly the colors we need to activate our commander. The Reaver Cleaver is going to be solid for this as well because treasure tokens, you can sack them for any color. Additionally, we have some massive creatures in the deck. Savala Heart of the Wilds, another card, again, that you can tap for any combinations of colors. So if we have an 8/8 on the battlefield, we can tap it for the exact colors we need to activate our commander twice, sack them twice, get some massive creatures on the board, just super solid in the deck. Also, she'll draw cards if those big creatures happen to be the biggest on the board. Ruthless Technomancer, another card we can sacrifice a big creature to create a lot of treasure tokens. Additionally, we can sacrifice those treasure tokens to then start reanimating cards from the graveyard. Pitiless Plunderer and Mahadi Emporium Master. These are going to be really good because now whenever we sacrifice our commander and that Saproling, we're at least going to get 2 treasure tokens every time we activate our commander's ability, making it a lot cheaper. Additionally, if we're using a Phyrexian Altar to sacrifice both of those, that just gives us the 4 mana we need exactly. So we can get into some scenarios where we just cast our entire graveyard, which is going to be pretty fun. Notably, that only works with Pitiless Plunderer since you get the treasure token immediately, and Mahadi, you're just going to have to wait for your value. But the value is still there, and that's why we included it. Old Gnawbone, another amazing card. We're bringing massive creatures onto the battlefield, and now whenever those massive creatures are dealing combat damage to our opponents, we're going to create a lot of treasure tokens. Moving on to removal, we have Cavalier of Night. I really like this because we can use it to sacrifice our commander. Additionally, it can get some cards back from the graveyard. Eternal Witness is one of those cards that can hit, and it gets really efficient. Kogla and Yadaro. Honestly, these two are super flexible, right? Whenever they enter the battlefield, we can have them fight something, or we can just discard them to get rid of an artifact or enchantment. Additionally, if we do that, we're going to draw a card off of it and shuffle it back into their library. So it can, have a lot of different utilities in the deck. Apex Alistor, a card that enters the battlefield and literally kills itself while it kills all of your opponent's creatures. This has to be one of the most fun cards to resolve in Magic. Terror of the Peaks. I like this card because without even considering the card you reanimate with your commander, just your commander and the Saproling are going to deal 4 damage to something. And then you can bring 7/7s from the graveyard, so we can get up to 11 damage with this guy pretty consistently. Ziatora the Incinerator. Just a really cool guy, and honestly, hey, we're creating those treasure tokens and we're sacrificing creatures to go ahead and kill other creatures. Who doesn't love that? Additionally, we can take out our opponents with this. Imagine sacrificing a Yargle and Multani dealing 18 damage to the face. I'm in love with it. Beast Within, Assassin's Trophy, really solid removal cards getting rid of anything our opponents are trying to do. Reclamation Sage, Caustic Caterpillar, again just really efficient removal. And finally, we have our board wipes with Massacre Worm. This can do a lot of damage over the course of a game while getting rid of those pesky token strategies. Bane of Progress, a ton of artifact enchantment decks are coming to prominence, and this will put them to a complete stop. And lastly, we have the end all, Blasphemous Act. Super solid, 1 mana board wipe. What I like about this is you only have to spend 1 mana, you wipe the board, and then you can actually rebuild your board on that turn because you just spent 1 mana to wipe the board. It's not very cost intensive like other board wipes usually are. And guys, that's going to do it for the deck tech. Let me know what your thoughts are on this deck. Honestly, it seems super fun to play. We finally get a really good reanimation Jund commander. And as always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors. I'll see you in the next one.